Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, Greg Anthony here, and welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this January 4th, 2017 day on our calendar. And, I got a great show for you today. First, we're going to show you that the Shriners, you know who they are, worship Allah. Then I've got 10 deep and dark, dirty secrets about the Freemasons. And finally, I want to show you how the biggest enemy America faces is the papacy. So let's get started. All right, the Shriners. Now, what made me want to do something on this, and I've done it before, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, was that it reminded me of I used to be in the restaurant business, and one of the restaurants I had was in Mitchell, South Dakota, and it was right on Main Street, and right across Main Street, and there was an empty lot and then a big building. And what was staring at the restaurant was the Masonic G symbol, right? And it was a big one right there, and that Masonic hall was right over there. So I figured maybe I'd get some Masons to come into my restaurant. Well, what I did is I had a huge, big screen TV. And I used to play Walter Veith on it, you know what he talks about, and other anti-Vatican stuff. And it would be playing during lunch hour, and it was amazing. Nobody really paid attention to it, but I was trying to subliminal, say that word, Greg, correctly. I was trying to basically get them to realize the errors of their ways. I never got any backlash on it, and I guess it was just too loud in the restaurant, but I thought it was quite hilarious. And so my quest to, teach people about the Shriners started and the Masons started a long time ago. And I remember when I started doing stories about what really goes on with the 33-degree Masons, boy, would I get backlash. Oh, I got these Masons that would call me and tell me how much good they do. And I said, well, perhaps you have an obligation to understand what goes on at the higher levels of your organization, don't you? And so I decided to look at the Shriners, and the reason is, the holiday season just ended, and you're barraged on TV with all of these ads. They bring on little children that are suffering, and, they are raising money for the Shriners. The Shriners are doing all this good. They have circuses, parades, and then they have all these burn hospitals, and they help these children, and they raise money. And they're well known for their famous circuses where they claim to raise money for their hospitals. It is a little known fact that they are really using these hospitals to accumulate great wealth for themselves. In June 1986, a daily newspaper in Florida, the Orlando Sentinel, published a report on the Shrine Hospital program. Excuse me, you're not going to see these reports anymore. 86, that's a long time ago. There was a semblance of free press back then. But they said 98% of the money the Shriners raised in these circuses wasn't going to the hospitals. It went to the Shriners for their parties. 98% went to their little cars and their little boats and their little temples and their little fez hats. You ever wonder why they wore that olive fez hat? It's amazing. And 98% went to all this stuff. 2% went to the hospitals. And here's a quote that I found from the Sentinel back then. It estimated from available records also show that Shrine hospitals in 1984 received just 1%, or 182,000 of an estimated 17.5 million in profits from about 175 Shrine circuses. Only one of the 76 temples for which the IRS records were available reported contributing any circus money to the hospital system. My question, okay, you know how the IRS came down on Tupper Saucy, the author of Rulers of Evil? How they put him in jail for 18 months for bogus charges? We've shown that the charges were bogus. Then we've seen how the IRS came after Tony Alamo, stole his books and a bunch of his property, so he couldn't defend himself, and they put him in jail for 4 or 5 years. This was back in the 90s for IRS fraud. Well, why doesn't the IRS come down on the Shriners? The reason is they work together. The IRS basically is the Pope's collection agency. And he tells people, or through his minions, who to attack and who not to attack. And so they don't want to attack their own here. And it's an amazing story. Now, as of September 30th, 2004, this appeared in Forbes magazine, reports that the Shriners had assets of $8.62 billion. Of the $948 million raised, the Shriners retained $412 million, with only a slight more than half going to charitable services. And I think that's an inflated number. You know, they basically probably didn't send that much money. Now, the magazine reported in 2006 they had amassed $9.5 billion empire. Okay? While appealing to the compassion of the general public using crippled children as bait, these men found a very profitable business through the covering of these hospitals. If you would like to know where the Shriner donations are going, look to their shrines, their temples, their Harley-Davidsons, their go-karts, jewelry, and all the cars they drive. And much, much more. Much, much more. It's an amazing story. And the one question I want to ask to you is, why do they wear these fez hats that have the Muslim symbols on them? Now, that's a real interesting question. Do the Shriners, ask yourself this. Now, that's a top-level organization of Masons, okay? Do they worship Allah? I'm going to show you that they do. So, folks, really think about this. We're fighting ISIS, radical Islam, but we allow the Shriners, who are worshiping the same Allah, to run wild in our country and take all this money. While you have to watch all these ads, and all these poor kids are displayed, on their commercials. Oh, please raise money for us. And they really are doing exactly what the Vatican does. The Vatican charities, they do the same darn thing. They all worship Lucifer. And let me show you what candidates. Now, these are the highest level guys through Freemasonry. These candidates for induction into the Shriners are greeted first by a high priest who says, quote, "By the existence of Allah and the creed of Muhammad, by the legendary sanctity of our tabernacle at Mecca, we greet you." Now, that's amazing to me. But why does it go over everybody's head? Because this is a society of brainwashed people. I wonder sometimes why I do this show. I know there's a lot of loyal listeners. But, sometimes I just have to, I feel like walking away right now, walking down the street to the first Shriner I meet, steal his fez hat, and throw it in the ocean. But anyway, let me get back to what I want to do. The inductees then swear on the Bible and the Quran in the name of Muhammad and invoke Masonry's usual gruesome penalties upon themselves. And here is their oath. And it's an incredible oath. They say this. This is their oath. "I do hereby upon this Bible and on the mysterious legend of the Quran and its dedication to the Mohammedan faith, promise and swear and vow that I will never reveal any secret part or portion whatsoever of the ceremonies. And now upon this secret book, by the sincerity of a Muslim's oath, I hereby register this irrevocable vow in willful violation, whereof may I incur the fearful penalty of having my eyeballs pierced to the center with a three-edged blade, and my feet flayed, and I be forced to walk on the hot sands upon the sterile shores of the Red Sea, until the flaming sun shall strike me with livid plague. And may Allah, the God of Arab, Muslim, and Mohammedan, the God of our fathers, support me to the entire fulfillment of the same. Amen, amen, amen." And with this oath, these supposed Christians swear on the Quran and declare Allah to be the God of our fathers, I wouldn't let these guys near these children. You say one bad word about it, wow, watch the backlash you get. From the perspective of Christianity and Islam alike, Shriners take the name of God in vain and mock both faiths. Here we go. It's credible. Well, you know what's interesting? I remember I was telling you about that Masonic lodge across from my restaurant? I went in there one day. Spooky place. And they let you go in certain areas. But I tried to, get into the locked doors. I'd go around and go, what's in there? Come on, how can I join you guys? Oh, it's a special place. And then one guy looks at me, aren't you the owner of that restaurant? I said, yeah. I said, I'm a businessman. How do I join? So he gave me all these brochures. I just was curious to see what was going on. I said, but I want to know what's behind. Can I get in these locked doors? Oh, no, you have to go through a certain period of, whatever, and you can't go in there until the High Master proves everything. I said, okay, give me your information and I'll come back. And I left, and I'm telling you, it's a scary place. But anyway, here's an interesting thing. Didn't I just say earlier that Shriners are Luciferians? Well, a very, very interesting thing happened on the way to the grocery store. This one Christian went to a Shriners get-together. They always go to these hotels, and he interviewed a Shriner who actually admitted he worshipped Lucifer. It's about a minute clip, so let me play that for you to verify what I said. Okay, I got to play this for you. This is real good. Now, it's a Shriner Freemason admits to worshiping Lucifer. Here we go.
Lucifer, what is your problem?
Just that, sir.
Okay.
I'm a Christian, sir.
I'm pure and virtuous and wholesome and innocent. How can you say anything about me?
Sir, you need to be born again.
I am born again.
Now, did you just say that you're Lucifer?
I am Lucifer.
Okay, define Lucifer for me.
Pure, virtuous, wholesome, innocent individual that's out to help people.
Lucifer is?
Yeah.
Say that again. Lucifer is a pure, holy...
Virtuous.
Now, is he the Lucifer that God created?
That's the same one.
Oh, man, this is great. I'm going to put this on the internet.
Oh, God bless you,
Amen.
brother.
Because that's exactly what the Shriners and Masons teach us, that Lucifer is light.
No.
And you're
what about those hospitals? They
you know what, sir? Jesus said, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, we did not do these good deeds in your name? And you'll say, away from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you.
Jesus said it?
In Matthew chapter 5.
Mercy.
No.
That's hard to believe.
So you're a Christian and you don't know that. Actually.
No, I really am.
You are.
Because I'm pure and virtuous.
You're pure and virtuous, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you're perfect without Jesus, right?
No.
Okay, tell me about Jesus. Who is Jesus?
Well, he's my leader.
Is he the Son of God?
Yes, he is.
Is he the only worshipful master?
Yes.
Have you ever been called worshipful master?
No, because I've just been too busy. I've been working. Working to help people.
What
like
kind
you.
of work? Okay.
Get out of here.
See, this is what a Mason confesses, is that Lucifer is light. You heard it?
Okay. Incredible, huh? So they're right from the horse's mouth. You got it. But anyway, as he was walking away, he was carrying that fez hat with all those Muslim symbols, the sword and the whole thing. What a crock these people are. They get away with this stuff. He hadn't, he was double talking at the end. But, it just goes to show you that when I saw those commercials with all, the Shriners doing all this good, like I said a million times on this show, if you are in an organization, know what the top level is all about. And there are so many Masons at the lower levels. Have no idea the Jesuits are involved in this. Have no idea the Shriners really worship Lucifer. And basically they're setting you up for the fall. And I think if everybody understood this stuff, there wouldn't be one Catholic left in the world if they understood what the Pope's all about. There wouldn't be one Shriner. There wouldn't be one priest going into the Jesuit order, and the world would be a better place for it. But it's not going to happen. Now, Can you believe this? And I was looking for some information on Shriners and Masons. And before I get to the 10 most, I got 10 dirty secrets about Freemasonry to present to you. And I'll do that in the second half hour. I got a little bit here. A guy wrote this, and I wanted to read it and then I got a couple of interesting clips on the Shriners. But this man said, there are Christians all over the world who even today suffer greatly, and some have been given up their lives because they refuse to compromise their faith in Christ. Now, one here, I've told you about what happened to Tony Alamo, but how many Christians overseas now in Nigeria and other places are being surrounded by Muslims and going to be genocided? We don't seem to be talking about that in the higher levels of our Masonic government and our Jesuit-driven government. When a Mason gets to the highest degree of the Scottish Rite or the York Rite, he is then allowed to go into what is called the shrine, the Shriners. You may have seen them in parades wearing their fezzes and swords and crescent emblems on them. You hear about the shrine circuses and the burn centers for children by the Shriners. People think this is a nice, fun, happy organization. They do so much good for crippled children and others. But remember what I said about how much money really goes to them? The kids? Very little. Reminds me of the Clinton Foundation. In order for a person to become a Shriner, he must go through all these degrees of Masonry, make all these blood-curdling oaths that we just read, worship gods who are not gods, except they are really worshiping Lucifer and Satan. But he must make a blood oath of allegiance to Allah and Muhammad, right here in this country. So we're fighting Islam, and we're letting these old Shriners walk around with their fez hats. Don't we, isn't there something going on here that we need to know? Now, the Shriner is then given a red fez after the whole thing with an Islamic sword and crescent jeweled on it. There's jewels on the front of it. This originates from the 7th century Arabia when the Muslims, under the leadership of Muhammad, slaughtered all Christians who would not bow down to the Allah. Allah, by the way, was not another generic name given to God by Muhammad. Allah is the tribal deity, the moon god of Muhammad. It was the name of the god in the tribe that Muhammad was born into. That is why every mosque today has a crescent moon on the top of its spire. Now when Muhammad's army of men out to slaughter all the infidels came to the city of Fez, there weren't these Fez hats honoring this in Morocco. They found a community of Christians. After killing all the Christians there with their Islamic-style swords, so they're wearing the sword and the Fez hat that killed all the Christians. Symbolic, isn't it? Anytime you see a Shriner, go steal their hat. I want to get rid of all those funny hats. And isn't it interesting that the Pope wears funny hats too? Yeah, they all wear these funny hats. I think we ought to get rid of all of them. If you see a cardinal or a pope, go steal his hat. I imagine that would cause quite a ruckus, wouldn't it? Oh, I need a lawyer. And I call my lawyer up and I say, John, you got to bail me out. He goes, what are you charged with? Stealing the Pope's hat. A big laugh comes out. Oh, and on the way, I took 2 Fez hats too. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, bail's about 10 grand. So don't get caught. But anyway, so here they are, wearing the symbol of all these Christians that were killed in Fez, Morocco, glorifying this victory over Christianity. Today, Shriners put on these fezzes. They're representing the hats dipped in the blood of Christians that are red with the Islamic sword and crescent, showing their allegiance to Allah and Muhammad, and defeat Christianity. If you are a Christian and you are a Mason or a Shriner reading this, you have no business to be part of any lodge. I'm saying this. Any lodge, no business being a part of the shrine. You can't be a Christian. And yet you really know what you're just lying to everybody. I encourage all of you guys that wear Fez hats, and all you cardinals and popes who wear those funny little miters and all those funny pagan hats, to take them off and find the real God. You know, it's not impossible. God can save anybody, even these guys. So basically, that's my thought about the Shriners. And, we talked about them building all these hospitals. Now, the question that I ask is, will building these hospitals get them to heaven? Do they think that? No, they don't care. They worship Lucifer. Okay, so I think that many people that get involved in Freemasonry do not know what they're getting involved in. No, they don't know. And so I got a couple more clips here, very short, before the break that I want to get in. Okay, this is a short 2-minute clip taking us, a guy put this together regarding Fez, Morocco. Okay, come on.
Morocco, which is in North Africa, you can look it on your map. And in the year 800 AD, 50,000 Catholics were slaughtered there by Muslims. And they said the blood ran so thick that the Muslims dipped their hats in the blood, and their hats turned red. And it's been a 1,200-year sign of Muslims' victory over Christians. And it was first commercially sold from Fez, Morocco. And the Shriners wear Fezes. Now, the Shriners tell us why they wear the Fez. This is in a book in 1977 put out by the Sabar Shrine Temple. They say this in the book, quote, "The Fez has been handed down through the ages as one of the most significant headdresses. The Fez derives its name from the place where it was first manufactured commercially, the holy city of Fez in Morocco," end quote. Also, during the initiation ceremonies of the Shriners, they, quote, "seal their solemn oath in the name of Allah, the God of our fathers." A little later on in the ritual, they, quote, they acknowledge, quote, "Islam as the one true faith." And you can ask some guy who claims to be a Catholic or a Christian that how can they do this, saying Allah is the one true faith. They also have on their calendar, the Shriners' calendar, the Order of Quetzalcoatl, which is pretty interesting because Quetzalcoatl is the stone serpent which Our Lady of Guadalupe came in Mexico to crush, and she converted 8 million to the Catholic faith by means of those apparitions. Some of the papal condemnations against Freemasonry, so that people know that Freemasonry has always been condemned by the Church.
Okay, I had to play that because this guy obviously, and I wanted to do this, he's denouncing the Shriners, and it's from a Catholic website, so I wanted to play this. And he's trying to tell you now that the Vatican's on the good side of this. That's a crock. And they are working together, and many of them are Masons themselves. Remember the story in the 80s where during the Vatican Bank scandal, when over 150 cardinals and bishops were outed as being members of the P2 Masonic Lodge, very deceptive Masonic Lodge in Italy, involved in all these crimes, and their names came out, even their code names. Remember Cardinal Marcinkus, the Chicago Archbishop who was the head of the Vatican Bank? His name was Gorilla. Yep, and guess what happens? It appears in the French, Italian papers, and I remember discussing this and trying to say, well, why doesn't this story get out to the American papers? And I knew 2 journalists at the time that wrote them to the same editor that I gave stories to, and they never got anywhere. And I remember me and these couple journalists were sitting having a dinner one night talking about, God, what is really going on? Why write these stories if they never get back to the States? There was no internet back then, and people relied on this news, and it was covered up because the head of the bureau gets orders from his boss, and even if he sent it, the newspapers, and see, when you work for a wire service, it goes to every newspaper in the country, and even if you send it, it probably would only appear in a few. Back then, there were a lot more newspapers. The internet wasn't around. But I wanted to play this because he denounced this last little mini clip. Denounces the Fez, right? And the Shriners worshiping Allah, but then says the good Catholic Church has always done this. Oh, that's a bunch of crock. We know it. The Vatican's they may say it outwardly, but that's not what they do behind the scenes. They're all members, all working together to do one thing, to create control, a one world order, one world government. We'll be back 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the Supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Oh, let me tell you, it is happening. But the problem is that it's happening right before our eyes, all this deception, and many people are just too blind to see it. And that's why these people get away with murder. That's why these secret societies exist. That's why the Jesuits do their dirty work behind the scenes. So many people, millions of people, do not want to look past what they're told on TV, what they're told by the pundits. Realize we've reached a stage where the media is controlled by them, so we have to go a little bit farther. And before I get to these 10 scandalous and dirty secrets of the Freemasons, a little clip I want to play, I just have a few comments, a few observations. That last clip I played on that Catholic website confuses people. Let's make it clear. Catholics are not Christians. And if any Catholic disagrees with me, I was a former Catholic. All you got to do is start looking deeply into the rituals, the traditions, all of these crazy sacraments, and you'll see it's pagan. And you got to understand that they are related. They work together with Freemasonry. Now, Freemasonry today People just think it's a philanthropic organization that does only good work. These Shriners advertisements that I was talking about, these Masonic homes for the elderly, they're all a front, just like Catholic charity organizations. Many view it as fraternal organizations that are dedicated to good. They have to have an outward cover. It's kind of like when you canonize Sister, Mother Teresa, and then you hear all these people talking about all the good she did. But I remember when I interviewed 2 nuns that were working in the financial department. They had to leave, but they told me that much of the money that she raised would go to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, not going to the poor. And if you ever look at these hospitals she had in India, they weren't treated with good doctor care. They were basically laying on little mats waiting to die. So check out who she really is. And then don't get me started on the Mother Mary apparitions and all of these Fatima sites and Medjugorje and how they bilk you out of money. We've done many shows on that. And how these Mary apparitions are false, fakes from the beginning. Now, Freemasonry claims in their own books it's a revival of the ancient mystery religions of Egypt and from Persia and India. Albert Pike. There's a big statue of Albert in Washington. Why? The guy's a Luciferian Masonic goofy man. Albert Pike in his Morals and Dogma, and Albert Mackey in his Encyclopedia of Freemasonry say that Masonry is a religion, and that every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion. It is interesting that many Christians have gotten into this religion not understanding how pagan it is, just like they get into Catholicism. Now here's an example. In a large church in Texas, the elders went to their pastor when they heard that a guest who has written against Freemasonry was to speak, and asked that the booking be canceled. It turned out that almost all of the elders were Masons of local lodges. The Sunday school superintendent was the supreme potentate of a shrine. Oh, I got all the Masons calling me now. And many members of the congregation belonged to these organizations. They were given the facts, references to their own secret documents and books, and cross-references to Scripture on the subject. They held an emergency meeting, which lasted until 4 a.m. After studying these discrepancies, they returned to the pastor and told him that every one of them had resigned from their lodges. This is happening all over the world. Masons, by their own statistics, have gone in the 1980s from 4 million members down to 2, so people are catching on. But I don't know about these statistics. I never like these statistics because a lot of this stuff is hidden, and a lot of people are Masons. They won't even admit it. It goes on and on and on. But I believe as more Masons examine the writings of these that I've just showed you, go to Morals and Dogma, go to Blavatsky's book, and you're going to see that what this is a scam. Now, I learned when I lived in Italy in the 80s that the Vatican and these priests were all involved in Freemasonry. Actually, the Jesuits were very deep into Freemasonry and have taken it over in a sense. And you can go and look at all the initiations in their lodges and do your own research on this, because it's really an important story. And, we have a new Freemason. He doesn't admit he's a Freemason. He's got to be a Mason. Trump has to be. He's a builder. He's one of the richest builders in the world. And what are Masons? Builders. So that'd be interesting to get to the bottom of how he is controlled and what we're in store for in the future. And like I said, we got a window of opportunity to do some good. And that's what I'm going to try to do by getting Pastor Alamo out of jail. And hopefully Trump, who said in public, I want to help Christians. And once we show this case to him, how this man was framed, I don't think he has a choice but to let him out. And we're going to present it to the pardon attorney in the months to come. So stay tuned. A big story unfolding. And if Christians really want to be Christians, you do your homework on that case. And then we'll talk about it on this show. Now, I did want to present this clip. And it's 10 scandalous secrets. Many you may know, but I thought it was interesting to present this to you. Well, the one thing I did want to say, just to emphasize the fact, you can't separate the Jesuits from the Freemasons, and it's important to remember that. Now, she's going to give you here these top 10 scandalous Freemason secrets. Here we go.
Top 10 scandalous Freemason secrets. The Freemasons are one of the most secretive and controversial religious groups in the world. Masons have existed for centuries, and if we are to believe their claims, they've existed covertly for even longer. Whatever their history, speculation has always been an enjoyable pastime, and this is especially true in the case of the Masons' more scandalous secrets. Having passed down traditions and secrets from one generation of initiates to the next, they make it difficult to know what's outdated and what's still practiced. Consider these 10 Masonic activities as provisional facts. We don't know for sure, but it's always an interesting exercise to imagine what might be going on behind our backs. 10. They will not testify truthfully against each other. Freemasons are commanded not to testify truthfully when another Mason is on trial. They admit that it may be perjury, but to them, it is a far greater sin to not protect one of their own. 9. They have a secret handshake. Though some members deny it to the public, the Freemasons have at least one secret Masonic handshake. Supposedly, there are even phrases a Freemason can utter when facing grave danger, causing other members to rush to their aid. The founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, is said to have uttered this phrase in the last moments before his death. 8. They have several secret passwords. This is one of the best-known facts about the Masons, but the general perception is that they have just one password. In fact, there are several passwords for various occasions and reasons. As the one person with the final syllable for the ultimate secret word was murdered, they substituted Morbonzi for this word, and only very few people know the actual secret word. This secret word is used only for ceremonies. Tubal Cain is the more common secret password, on the tip of every Freemason tongue. 7. Their rituals involve a noose. The initiation rituals, though described by Masons as beautiful ceremonies, include a noose. It's hard to tell whether this is meant as a threat, a call to maintain silence, or simply as the symbol of an umbilical cord, as they claim, but in any case, it's unusual enough to warrant a mention. 6. They're obsessed with the sun. Freemasons believe that the East symbolizes rebirth. They sing the sun in its flight, marveling at its passage through the sky. Masonic lodges tend to be built in the East and in the West, as an attempt to control solar power for their own purposes. 5. Masons exclude atheists. It's impossible to become a Freemason if you're an atheist. The first requirement is that potential members must believe in a higher power of some sort. They claim not to care what higher power that is, but you must define it for yourself. You can lie about it, but religion seems to be a point of honor among them. On the other hand, traditionally excluded groups, such as gay men, are included in Masonry, so long as they behave in the same moral manner as other groups. The temple still excludes women, but some groups are currently challenging that fact. 4. They work to control politics and finance in various countries. The official corruption of Masonry is well documented, but often covered up. 500,000 Masons in England are disproportionately involved in banking, politics, and government. Even hospitals and universities are often controlled by the Masons. 3. Their symbol is on the dollar bill. If you've ever looked closely at the US dollar bill, you've probably seen the all-seeing eye above the pyramid. This symbol is a Freemason symbol, and the Latin underneath is a Freemason motto, meaning New World Order. Many say that the decision to include this Masonic symbol was not influenced by Freemasons, Benjamin Franklin being the only Mason on the design committee, but the coincidence remains fascinating all the same. 2. Anders Breivik was a Mason. Breivik, responsible for the 2011 mass murder in Norway, was a member of the Lodge of St. Olaf in Oslo. He was promptly excluded, but his degree of involvement within the organization is open for debate. 1. Masons played a key role in space exploration. Some say that Masons have an agenda to take over the world, but some Masons seem to have their sights set on the moon. Astronauts in the Apollo program, including Buzz Aldrin, were self-professed Masons. Their right flags have been to the moon and back, and Aldrin seems to have claimed the moon for his Masonic lodge in Texas. Some of these strange and scandalous secrets of the Freemasons are obviously urban legends, and should be taken with a grain of salt, but others seem to contain a degree of truth. One thing's for certain, Masonry is by no means an outdated cult. It still has many active members who seem to be working for some purpose, even if we can't all agree on what that is.
Okay, before we move on, I wanted to mention this regarding that last clip. Obviously, the person who made it wasn't aware we never did go to the moon. And secondly, right about all the Freemasons as astronauts, and that they are sworn to secrecy, not only regarding that we didn't go to the moon, but also that NASA is a complete fraud. And there are no such thing as space stations, and there are no such thing as satellites. And I'm going to make those statements very boldly, as I've backed them up in the past. Don't have time today to go into them, but we will. I promise you in 2017 touch on some of those things. One interesting thing about satellites, and you can get into such discussions because that brings the whole idea of flat Earth and is it a globe, are we stationary, etc., which I think, and that's probably somebody from NASA calling me, trying to fill me with all that nonsense science that they, none of that stuff has ever been able to be proven. It's all speculation. But people buy it hook, line, and sinker. But anyway, just let me give you some, I like to make things simple. So I'm getting my satellite TV, I put that in quotes, hooked up, right? And guess what? I realized, I'm going to ask this guy. The guy that's putting the satellite. I said, where are you pointing that at? He goes, I'm pointing, there's a cell tower over there. I said, oh, you use a cell tower. Okay, that's fine with me, as long as the TV comes on. I want to watch a couple things. Now, also, a guy, I got this down. I should have, let me see if I could find it real quick. Let me see if I can find this real fast. Okay, I found somebody that was on a little blog. He was doing the same kind of thinking I was, and he said, what does DirecTV use for satellites? And he puts a bunch of question marks. And here's what he found out. He said, so I was driving around this small town I live in, about 6,000 people, and I noticed all of the TV dishes were pointed differently by neighborhood people. I decided to try and figure out what's that all about, because I really thought they had to all be pointing in the same direction. Now, we have only one cell tower in the whole town, and it's on top of our water tower. Noticing the orientation of all the dishes, I tried to draw lines from around the houses and dishes and where they were pointing. They all converged on the cell tower. Any explanations? DirecTV does not ever say they use cell towers. Well, the guy I talked to, the worker I talked to, said they did. That's because there aren't any satellites. GPS uses ground-based technology. That's another one that's interesting. Google Earth uses high-flying military drones. Why would they do that if there were satellites up there? It's crazy. Now, they state that they use boosting centers in remote areas to help. I don't believe that one. But anyway, that's just a little tidbit regarding that little clip, and I say to that person, didn't quite understand we never went to the moon. She was right about Freemasonry being involved in NASA, that's for sure. And all the astronauts, I think, are Freemasons. Maybe there's one that isn't. So if there aren't, so tell me this: if you know of an astronaut that's not a Freemason, let me know. Okay, last thing on Freemasons today. You know, Hollywood's full of Freemasons. A lot of the major actors involved in Hollywood are Freemasons. Whether they tell you or not, they hide it. And you can go find a list of them. It's hard to verify anything. I'm not going to go through each one. But anyway, Hollywood's full of it. And there was a movie, kind of the story's been overlooked, but I wanted to bring it up because it has to do with Freemasonry and Hollywood and a number of things. Ever wondered why all these movies, these apocalyptic movies, talking about the police state, Minority Report, all these things, Angels and Demons, all these things, and all these movies that you would seem would be against the establishment, why these directors are they're still around, they're still working together with their other Freemasons. When I asked the question, do you remember the movie that was being made called Gray State? And there was a guy named David Crowley and his family that were murdered while he was making the movie. Well, my thinking is that he was telling us the truth about what Freemasonry and their plans are. They didn't want this movie out, so he was killed. Now, they said it was a suicide, but everyone around him, why would he commit suicide during the middle of this movie that was going to be quite successful? Now, I found a little video here of a man who calls himself, he's got a website called Sword of the Valiant. He talks about this and makes us aware that there was a movie coming. They remade Gray State and put it out, but he said, don't watch it. This is another propaganda movie. Listen to what he says about this, because it's quite interesting.
Praise the Lord. This is Brother Clinton. Welcome to my living room again. Short video I needed to make for you right now. It's a precaution, actually, to those of you out there who are subscribers to my channel, and actually all of you out there who might have the opportunity to see this. I want to make sure that I don't get the cart before the horse here. There is a movie called Gray State, G-R-A-Y-S-T-A-T-E, Gray State, that has been released on YouTube, and it has been released under the pretense of being the same movie called Gray State that was in progress by a man named David Crowley. David Crowley and his family were murdered by the United States government recently in their home. Of course, the mainstream media reported it as he shot his family, his wife and little daughter, and then shot himself. But that's ridiculous. It's obvious what happened. The movie Gray State that he was working on was a project which described in detail the agenda of the corporate elite of this world to, number one, build up a police state in order to subdue the masses so that they can rule over the world, and number two, incite the people of the world to riots and violence in order to cause them to step into the snare so the police state can have the excuse to stomp on their necks. That is the agenda nowadays. The elite, corporate elite of this world, the criminal mafia that's overtaking the world, they're no longer hidden from the world. And the reason for that is because they don't want to be hidden from the world anymore. They have everything in place. They're already they've got their police state already, and everything's all prepared. So the only thing that remains is for them to incite the people to riots and violence to step into the snare so that they can unleash their police state upon the people and have that control with an iron fist. And that's why you see these protests all over the world, in every country. I won't say every country, but in many countries all over the world, especially the U.S. and Europe. And when you look from a broad standpoint of all these protests that are happening, you can see that they were all organized and sent forth by the same organization. They all have the same modus operandi. They all have the same operating procedure. They all have the same slogans. It's, that fake terror attack that happened in Paris a couple of weeks ago supposedly happened in the morning, and then before that night was over, 15,000 people in Paris had organized themselves with signs that all said the same thing in a protest in Paris. That's pretty ridiculous to think that just happened by accident. All these things are happening on purpose. Okay, having said that, there is a movie called Gray State Just like when I talked to you about the United States of America being two different things. There's the country called the United States of America, and then there's the corporation called the United States of America, which is called by that same name in order to fool people into thinking that it's the country when it's actually a different thing. It's a corporation, a foreign government to the United States of America that exists in the District of Columbia. Well, there's two different gray states. There's the movie Gray State, which was being worked on by a man named David Crowley, who is now dead, which was designed to expose the things that are happening in the world today. And there's another gray state which has been released on YouTube recently, which is purported to be that same movie, but it's not the same movie. And I'm going to explain to you very briefly why. There are some people in this world who are what we call shills. Alex Jones is one of them. Alex Jones is a man who is employed, obviously, by the CIA and the FBI, one or the other or both, in order to release just enough information to the public to make people angry, but not the whole truth, just enough to make them angry, and then to incite them to violence and disrespect against the authorities in order to incite civil war. That's what Alex Jones is for. Okay, if you don't know that by now you know. Okay, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can do the research or whatever. I used to listen to Alex Jones a lot a few years ago, and the Lord just kept telling me, you need to come away from that. You need to come away from that. So I would come away from it for a while, and then I would be sitting at the internet, and I would look at a couple Alex Jones videos, and I'd kind of get drawn into it again, and the Lord would say, you need to come away from that. You need to stop it. You need to come away from it. I just knew in my heart something was wrong. And when I did come away from it, then the Lord revealed to me what was going on with Alex Jones. And there's other people like him too, like Adam Kokesh, and I can't think of the names of the others right now, but there's many out there who are employed by the establishment in order to cause you to believe that they're on your side when they're actually on the other side.
Okay, I'm out of time. He's right on that regarding Jones. But anyway, I got about another 6 minutes on this video. It'll give you a reason, folks, to come back tomorrow. But don't be fooled by that Gray State movie on the internet. And like I said, I'm going to give you at least a synopsis of the last few minutes of this video that I did not have time for. Time is of an essence here, because we have to go right now. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, on the Investigative Journal. Have a good evening, and see you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.